Hello, this is Chris Coffey, Instructional Technology Coach for Bamberg School District 1. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to insert a table into Google Docs and then how to manipulate it. So let's go ahead and get started. I like to open up my docs in drive.google.com. As you can see, I'm already in the folder that I want to save the file as. So I'm going to go New. I'm going to click Google Docs. By default, if I just click Google Docs, it's going to be a blank, and that's what I want. So I've got a blank document now, and first thing I want to do is change the page setup. I've got a video on this. You may want to check it out. I'm going to click on File. I'm going to go down to Page Setup, and I'm going to change this one to Landscape, and I'm going to make it narrow margins so that I have a little bit more room, and I'm going to click OK. So a lot of reasons you may want to use tables. There are basic tables and there are more advanced tables, but ultimately it's just a grid of boxes. So what I want to do, let's say I wanted to make a flyer and I want a nice big border around the side. By default, there is no border option inside of Google Docs. But what I can do is I can insert a table that is 1 by 1. And now I've got a little border where you're like, that's not big enough. So let's manipulate it. If I move my mouse over the edge, over the border, notice the mouse changes from regular cursor to little double lines with arrows. And I'm just going to click and drag towards the bottom. If you go too far, I'll show you what happens. It looks like it vanished. It did not vanish. It went to the next page. So I'm going to hit Control Z for undo, or you can hit the back arrow. And I'm going to just try again. See if I can get it close. There we go. Might want to go a little bit further. There we go. So now I've got a nice border, but that's kind of plain. I want it nice and pretty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play with the color. I can come up here and I can change the border color. Let's say I want it nice blue. Let's say dark red. There we go. Something different. Might be hard to see because that line is so thin. You can barely tell it's red. Well, here I can do the border width. And so I can click on that and say I want it to be 6 points. There we go. So now I've got a nice, big, thick border. And maybe I want to have fun with it, so I want little dots instead of straight line. There we go. So I have a nice border, and inside of this, I can type away. Okay, I can do whatever I need to do to make my flyer. So that's one way you can. I'm going to undo all the way. Actually, if I right-click, I can come here to delete table. It was there somewhere, and do that. I can delete a table by right-clicking and deleting table. I can also just click on it, like highlight it, and delete it. Okay, so I can't just click on it. You have to highlight it and hit the delete button, and it'll go away as well. So that's one way I might use tables. But for my students, let's say I have an assignment for them. I want to do a comparison between South Africa and the United States South for segregation. And one of the ways I want to keep it organized and kind of help them make connections is to put it in a table format. So for that, I'm going to go Insert Table. And now, instead of leaving it at 1-to-1, I'm going to move this out. Now, I can go as far as 20 by 20. I can always add them later, but my initial table can go as large as 20 by 20 or as small as 1 by 1. I want to do a 3 by 4 or a 4 by 3. So I'm going to click on that. So I have my table. So I'm going to say South Africa. I'm going to say U.S. South, and I want to compare how their laws were for voting and for, let's see if I can spell it right, property, and for marriage. Okay. Now, I've got the general layout, but if I were to print this out, the students wouldn't be able to write very much in here, so I'm going to want to change the size. So just like I did with that 1 by 1, I'm going to readjust this until I have it the size I want. Problem is, if I just do this one, it's just changing that one. And if I try to go back and do this one, now my cell is way too big, or my table's way too big. So one of the suggestions is when you're resizing, start with the ones on top and work your way down. That way you can kind of get a better idea of where they're going to start and stop. So see, now that's nice and neat and distributed. But I don't like the way this looks. For starters, I want my headings to be centered. And that's way too small. I could change the size. I could, come in here and go 36 and change it to color blue and all that good stuff. But as I've stated in other videos and in trainings, you want to get used to using your styles. So I'm going to say, all right, I want those to be, I'm going to make those heading 2, and I want to make the areas that I'm comparing heading 1. So a little bit of difference in them. Remember, I can come in here and say, all right, now I want to change this to, let's say 30. I want it to be bold, and I want it to be red. All right, and then all I have to do is change my heading 2 to match that, and it'll automatically change it for the rest of them. So make sure you're getting used to doing that. Same thing here. I'm going to say bold, and let's make them blue, and I'm going to change it to heading 1 to match that. Now, I can put this in the center, but this doesn't look right because it's way at the top. I want it in the center here. The way you do that is you highlight the cells that you want to have the text in the center, and then you right click, and you're going to go down to Table Properties. So when you right click, you get all these options. You're going to go down to Table Properties, and instead of being cell vertically alignment to the top, you're going to move it to the middle. If you wanted to, you can move it to the bottom. In this case, I want it in the middle, and I'm going to click OK, and there we go. Now, if my table is small, I can right click and go Table Properties, and the table itself I can align center, right, or left. That does not, so let me highlight South Africa to show you. Just highlight them both. If I change the table alignment to center, or let me change it to right, it doesn't change the text. What it's actually changing is where the table is. So if this table were much smaller, then all I have to do is come in here, highlight the table, right click, go to Table Properties, and say, all right, I want it to align to the right. And notice the whole table moves over to the right. Now I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to make this larger again so it's closer to what I want my students to see. So that's the difference between cell alignment and table alignment. If I want to change the alignment of the text, I still need to do it up here. So I go right alignment, left alignment, just like you would in a regular document without a table. So now that I've got those options done, and my students have enough room that they could write a little bit about each topic for each country, then what winds up happening is I might want to change it up even more. So if I highlight these cells, I might say, all right, I want to go back to Table Properties, and I want to change the color. So this is that cell background color. And let's say I wanted to do that, say like a dark orange. And then I wanted to do this in a light orange. I'd right click those cells, Table Properties, and I'd change that to a light orange. So now I've got that. That red no longer looks good, so I could change it and say, hang on, I'm just going to change the one to show you how styles work again. So I'm going to change it to, let me just go black and say, all right, match the heading to that, and it'll change the rest of them. So I can change this how I need to, when I need to. I can print this off, the students can write on it, or they can access it from the Google Classroom once I post it there. A couple other options. Let's say I decided, you know what, they really need to have a fourth comparison. If I right-click on a cell, notice I have these options to insert or delete rows. Okay? So if I wanted to insert a column to the right, all I have to do is insert column to right, and now I could add another one, wealth. What's the wealth difference? Okay, whatever. I could do this, or maybe I say, you know what? I like those, but I don't like this one, so I'm going to delete that column. because wealth and property might be considered the same thing to students. So I'm going to play with it, and notice, just like I start from top to bottom to adjust the width or the height, I start left to right so that I can kind of see where my table's going to end. So those are the basics. There are other things you can do with tables, but that's the basics. I hope you found this video informative. There are more instructions and things that you can find out on our website, which is in the description below. And thank you for watching.